Hello, and welcome to Design Review, the podcast for engineering your life. I'm Robert Haynes, founder of Engineering Your Life, and my guest today is Melanie Bates. I know Melanie because she's a master coach that was working with Creative Mind when I took my training last year, and I got to know Melanie as she has been a strong advocate for us as coaches, and it was such a delight to talk to her about what she's up to and about how much she has been a champion for the coaches in the program and for me in particular. I wanted to share Melanie with everybody, and so welcome to Design Review, Melanie. I have your bio here. I'll read it here and then I'll ask you if there's anything else. So for over a decade, Melanie Bates has been known as the book shaman, helping authors to write books, build their businesses, and land on the New York Times and USA bestseller lists. When she eventually understood was that the book was never the point. The writer always was, and what the writer needed wasn't craft, it was excavation. Oh, that's landing. Today, she works as a master certified Jungian depth coach, certified equus coach, and certified spiritual teacher. Oh, I'm going to want to talk about each one of those. She guides women in the second half of life who are done marketing, making the trade the culture offers, and ready to welcome home their heretics, those exiled, disavowed, and still wild bits within, so they can finally create the writing, the business, the life. Ooh. That just lands.
Oh,
Welcome, Melanie. Welcome to Design Review.
thank you so much for having me, Robert. I've never heard that out loud, so yeah, it feels like it's from my heart. Yeah, it's been a long time
Uh,
coming.
I really appreciate it. I appreciate the depth of feeling. I mean, there's dimensions underneath that I felt as I was reading it. So it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you here, and it's a pleasure to have this chat. Is there anything that you wanted to share with people? Largely, this is a conversation between you and I that others get to watch.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that you'd like to share in introduction before we dive into the topics we're going to talk about today?
No, I will say that feeling I'm feeling you. Like I have little tears in my eyes already. We're like 3 minutes in. like I can just feel just the connection and the depth here. So I'm just really honored to be here, and I will try to be eloquent. I'm much happier behind my keyboard writing, but we'll do our best, and I'm excited to be here and talk to you. So you're making it feel easy. Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful. It's funny. As I've embarked upon this journey of becoming a coach, and the podcast was something that I found by accident.
Mm.
I was invited by one of my LinkedIn friends to be on their podcast, and we just had a chat. It was so easy and so comfortable. And we're like, "Oh, we need to do more of these. We haven't yet," but then I realized that I really like talking to people. I really like getting to know them. I really like, and that was never possible. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's fine. I'll finish the story. It was never possible earlier in my life because that would have required me to actually share deeply of myself. And I never used to do that.
Yeah.
Now I find that all of the relationships that I have, including with you, my friend, are ones that are really deep, really open, vulnerable. And me opening up about myself tends to open up the space.
Yeah.
And so I've really enjoyed our conversations, and that's what's led to this.
Yeah. I think that vulnerability and transparency is the connection point. It really feels like that. Yeah.
It certainly felt like that to me. So, I'm really enjoying doing this process, and I'm really, really glad to have you here. So, we're going to be talking about, when we kind of talked a little bit before, about creativity, writing books, and kind of wherever our conversation takes us.
Yeah.
Um, in that vein, since that's something that, book shaman and guiding people through the process of writing books, which I phrased somewhat intentionally. It's not just guiding the book, it's guiding and opening, and you use the word excavating, which I love the archaeological aspect of depth work. So That's the answer, helping people through books and helping coach and others through the creative process. What is the why that has that be an answer?
It's interesting because to try to say why goes into this feeling realm that's almost hard for me to put into language, but I will share just a little bit of maybe background that shows sort of, I like to say that all of the seemingly disparate threads or paths in our life can coalesce into a purpose. And so originally over a decade ago, I was helping people build businesses, launch
Okay.
programs, and I worked for some big names and helped them build successful businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them ended up writing a book, which I kind of was the sounding board for. And she's the one that gave me that moniker. Like I always struggle with that because I'm not trying to culturally appropriate.
Yeah.
And but it stuck because then I started getting referrals and they were like, "Oh, you are the book shaman." And so it just kind of stuck. Um, but what I think about that now is it's the process. It's not me, it's the process of excavation. Because, Robert, I literally did think back then, and I didn't have nearly as much knowledge and understanding of the work of Carl Jung at that time.
Yeah.
And I was very much in my just living through my ego. It was driving the car and
Yeah. I hear
and I
you.
was like, yeah, we hit the times list. And I mean, it was just all very, but what ended up happening is over a series of years, I started to realize that the process of writing was doing something so much deeper. And no one ever wrote me a testimonial or said thank you or because of the book. It was always about their own transformation in writing it. So that's my why. Does that make sense?
It's all landing really deeply. So yeah, I mean, it's also reminding me of my own journey, but like to an extent, the why is because of what's coming out of the process itself. And yeah, it's defying I can understand the language part. It's really it's a deep concept, but it feels like what I'm feeling from you as you're describing that is that it impacts you
It does.
to help shepherd the process of
Mhm.
impacting the writer in the process of creating the book. It's a multi-layered sort of a thing. Did I get that?
You absolutely nailed that. And I always hesitate. I need a little bit of grit with my woo. Like I need a little dirt under my fingernails. But I will say that it's almost like you're kind of helping people move between those two worlds of the conscious and the unconscious
Yeah.
and sort of acting as a guide. And I can't believe I'm saying that out loud, but it's true. I just feel like it's something where you're so deeply holding space for someone to sort of fold out their story and make sense of it and make meaning and see all of the threads and the patterns that they've been living. Yeah, it's a deeply and the book is just a byproduct almost. It kind of doesn't even matter. Yeah. Yeah.
It does land. I mean, I'm sort of, well, as I always do, I'm like mapping that onto the journey that I've had in the work I do. And, I'm only relatively newly minted as a Jungian coach, although in a way it felt like I just unearthed something that had always been there.
Yes. Yeah.
That's been part of the experience. But I've been coaching for quite a while, not knowing that I was being a coach.
Mhm.
So I've mentored young engineers, sometimes not so young engineers. I've also helped people in recovery, and recovery at first looks like don't do the harmful thing, but recovery, what really recovery is recovering self, connection to capital S self and life. And I've been doing that for 7.5 years. First for me, because client number 0 by my definition is me,
Mhm.
and then for the others. And so the process of helping somebody discover their life by going through, say, 12 steps, for example, which by the way Jung had a lot to do with.
He did, absolutely. I know about that. Him and Bill W., right?
Yeah, which I didn't know when I first went into Creative Mind. I didn't realize there was a connection of Jung into 12 step. And meanwhile, all of the layers just lined on top of each other so beautifully that I feel like my life of awakening, my own awakening, has been a result of just shining a lot of different lights on the gem.
Yeah.
Um, and it's beautiful and it's complex and it's fascinating. And there's no end
Mhm.
to it. So yeah, to put it into a somewhat cliche expression, life's about the journey, not about the destination. And so yeah, a book is a byproduct.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back to something you said because I think it's so powerful. One of the things that I think is so powerful about recovery work, I mean, I can see why you say I have been coaching because, the most significant part of coaching to me is the relationship between the client and the coach, right?
Yeah.
That
Mhm.
vessel that's created, and you are literally a compassionate witness for someone to go through those steps. That's hardcore stuff. I mean, you're diving into the depths, right? So I can see that for you.
Yeah. And it's also a lot like coaching in that you can't do someone's recovery for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even though some people in some programs do it this way, especially with what I've dealt with, especially with codependence and love addiction, in my most prominent challenges, um, you cannot do anything other than hold space if somebody is to be successful. The work must be motivated from within, dealt with from within, falling off the saddle and getting back on the horse over and over and over again. Um, and developing confidence in oneself. There's so many overlaps to what I see that's what coaching actually is.
Yeah.
And I really like that. As much as I used to love to be a mentor and share my wisdom, learning, and I learned through the Creative Mind program very deeply that coaching isn't that.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I think, I'm in the process, however long it will be, of writing my first book.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and that's part of what got us on that topic. Um, what is it like? Well, I can get so distracted by this. I just get fascinated by the conversation.
We can go
Um,
wherever you like.
and it's going to,
Yeah.
I chase squirrels all the time.
I
Um,
love that.
so what is it like to be in the middle of that process, at any place you can choose, whether it's at the very beginning of getting to know somebody who is in the process of writing a book, or in the middle of it, or as they're finishing it, because it's a big long journey. What is it like to have done what you've done, book shaman or author coach or whatever role you want to have there? What is that like for you to be in that process as the coach?
So I like that you started it out with a reference to, oh, squirrel, look, squirrel. Um, my personal writing process, oh my gosh, Robert, it's so painful. I can't remember who said that they just like have to sit down, open their vein and bleed. Oh, writing's easy. You just, open your vein and bleed. My process is I sit down to write and I'm like, oh my gosh, the grout in my shower needs cleaning like right now. Like I don't even have grout. Okay. I, I just, or this needs to be done right now. My mind is just like, and I'm up and out of my chair and just literally like a squirrel, like squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. Everything is a squirrel. And I have to just let that be and then sit back down and keep working on it and get up and then sit back down. It's painful, to be honest. And yeah, I think that most of my clients experience that. There's a lot of resistance. I give a lot of credit to Stephen Pressfield, his capital R resistance idea. I think that most of that resistance, I used to say, and I still feel this way today, I don't believe there's such a thing as writer's block. I think writer's block is simply thinking about who's going to read my writing. And so I think it's kind of almost Jungian, right? Like, how am I going to be perceived? Am I going to be kicked out of the cave? Like, is it good enough? Is it going to be success? All of those things just that keep us from writing. And I think eventually I settle into that state of flow if I sit long enough and I let myself go through that resistance bodily, right? I literally go through it bodily. I finally get through that and I get into that flow state, and I can lose myself for hours, and I will literally go back and read something and be like, did I write that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That so many things are landing about that. On the squirrel topic, one of my favorite expressions is my kitchen is never so clean as when I have a report due.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
That seems to be resonant with a lot of people. And among the things that have been challenging for me in my life, I have identified as a lifelong procrastinator. And in fact, have suffered more from that than almost anything else. And I've blamed myself for not having the willpower, the determination, the focus, all the things that well-meaning people, sometimes not so well-meaning people, have given as advice. I was in elementary school that I had teachers that say, you're so bright, if only you would just apply yourself.
Oh.
And I'm like, well, why didn't anybody ever tell me that? Gee, all I have to do is apply. Yeah, it's like, I'm trying. But yeah, having, figured out in my mid 50s, I have ADHD. It's like, well, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, your description of the process and the discomfort and the grout that isn't even there, which, yeah, that lands. It's been interesting. My writing, I had written almost nothing for public consumption at all prior to 2.5 years ago.
Wow.
And I've written and I'm capable of writing, but writing when I need to write has been torture. Even like technical reports, which I've written many of them. I got very, very good at documenting the processes that I followed as a development engineer. I wrote a lot of really deep descriptions of how I did what I did in the realm of metrology, especially. But when it came time to actually do the writing, yeah, the things you described about what are people gonna think? Oh man, is that the boogeyman on my shoulder? About writing and about life, about just public speaking, same thing.
Yeah.
And in fact, if I wasn't literally having this conversation on the podcast, if I was trying to talk to the viewer, I'd lock up.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not even looking at myself. I'm looking at you.
and I'm looking at you. It helps a lot. But it's like the format evolved because this is what I need. I have on occasion when I can get myself in the right spiritual place where it doesn't feel like it's me talking. And I have recorded some videos that way. It takes a while. But other than that, it's just so much easier for me to like talk to a person and just get curious about what's going on and reflect. But I'm in the process of writing now, but the way I'm writing right now is I'm writing posts,
Yeah.
which took a while to figure out how to do. And I would write a post and then I would want to go avoid the world for 2 months. I didn't want to look at anybody, see anybody, do any. My very first post was, I'm retiring and I loved these people and I worked here for 25 years and they're so amazing. And I got so freaked out, I rewrote it 10 times in 4 hours.
That is that feeling, right? What are people going to think? And it's almost like gosh, what do they call it? It's like a vulnerability hangover almost.
That's Brené Brown's term.
Yes.
Yeah. And what happened for me on that, largely that hits after I've hit send.
Right. No, right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then
Aaron's that last night, by the way.
Oh, yeah, me too. I mean, my last hard round is not done yet, but wrote asking for people that would be willing to help me with testimonials because
Good.
I provide really great detailed descriptions of what I do, but it's not nearly so easy to hear as somebody who's actually been impacted.
Yeah.
Um, but asking people to do that, oh man, having sent out a few messages like that, I'm immediate like, oh, you self-centered jerk, all kinds of bad language. And as much as I know about this, and as much as I'm able to describe the various parts of me and my inner child that is having a little tantrum, shadow just screaming at me, that helps me deal with that. Before I knew that was what was going on, I would just be all manner of, this is what's wrong. Sorry, if I see there's a light going off over there.
Well, it's really striking me, like, and I'm not saying this in a bad way at all, but it's striking me that you like dove into the deep end with writing, because usually my recommendation is that if I work with somebody, we're creating a container where it's just us. But if somebody's doing this on their own, you are just doing it for yourself. You are letting it all come out. Like it's like throwing just a huge mound of clay on the table. You're not trying to shape it. You're not trying to make it make sense. You're literally just letting it come out. So you're actually taking, for what would be for me, a more difficult route, like, ooh, to just do it immediately for the public. I mean, that's great.
It's been a huge part of my growth and most of my coaching. And I think, I like have 6 coaches right now, I think. Um, most of my coaching is around what's coming up while I'm doing this. Like I'm living out loud. I am
Mhm.
journaling in public, sharing. Now, getting vulnerable about what's going on and what's gone wrong in my life is no longer so hard. I've actually made an enormous amount of progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm doing it by doing it. So that's been really helpful. So in a way, in fact, you introduced me to an author who had a similar experience. My writing is part of my therapy.
Mhm.
Me getting open and honest and digging in. As much as I'm worried about what people will say, the biggest pain comes from my own judgment of myself.
Oh, 1000%. Yeah, 1000%. Yeah.
And I survived most of my life by looking the other way,
Mhm. Yeah.
burying, numbing
Mhm.
with, you name it, food, relationships, TV, internet. Um, and now that I have a commitment to, support for, and a desire to not numb, to have the feelings, and I'm doing things like, growing a business in public.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll say that I am thick in the process of excavating. I love
Yeah.
that term. I'm just going to steal it from you. Into my own psyche. And I realize as a person in recovery, as a growing person, as a coach, this process will never end.
Right.
I have
No.
no reason
Yeah.
for it to be ending. And on one hand, at one point, it was like, when can I be done?
Yeah,
I
that's
remember.
the sad, we're never complete, like, we're not just gonna get over our complexes. We're just gonna circle back around, but we're gonna go
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
higher,
we can
like,
we can spiral. Yeah,
yeah,
we can.
yeah,
I
we can
like the
spiral
helix
up,
that.
but we can
Yeah,
also spiral down. I mean, you know
yeah,
what I
it does.
love, Robert? I love so much that what you're saying is really, I mean, it's kind of fundamental to creative mind too, like to our training, like that we just see the results out in the world. We can see the reflection of our mind in our results out in the world. And you're literally living that as an experiment in your life. Like, let me do this thing and see what happens around it. And then, get support. And I mean, you're living it. That's amazing.
I am, and it is amazing. And sometimes it's really, really hard.
Oh, no, no question. No question. Yeah, no question.
But I would have it no other way.
Yeah.
I spent so much of my life terrified that anybody would know the truth about me, because if they knew the truth about me, then they would reject and abandon me. And I know all of the history. I know my relationship with my dad and my mom and, my stepfather and that unfortunate stuff. That all shaped my view of the world. In fact, learning about mother complex was fascinating. Learning that my relationship with my mother impacted my view not just of how she is or mothers are, but how the entire world is. That
Yes.
opened up a lot
Right. Yeah.
for me. And as much as I spent most of my early life, meaning through my 40s, like worshiping my mother, some of the how harshly she judged other people, and including herself, um, had me convinced that any mistake I made that was discovered would result in me being like banished from anything and everyone. And so I covered up, hid mistakes. I would be having trouble with a project and I wouldn't tell anybody, but instead I would like work all night, multiple nights in a row, trying to like make up for it before I tell anybody.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I like to say I was a very successful engineer at great cost.
Oh, that's a great, yes. You know what you're making me think of? For a long, long time, I've like said, I have a lot of half-baked theories that I can't like prove, but there is actually science around this right now that maybe Maslow's hierarchy is not correct, that the base of that pyramid is not about our base physiological needs, but the base of the pyramid is about belonging. Because you will see
Mm.
people not considering safety, food, shelter to belong.
Ooh, this is a really great, deep topic. So I want to follow it, and then I
Yeah,
want to remember and get us back to the
I
track. But
know, squirrel.
I want to.
I mean, I
No,
just
that's
can't help it.
that's
But
part
there
of this
is a
program.
book where some psychologists, I think it's called Belonging. I'm not sure. I could let you know for notes, but yeah, there are books
This
that are
one, yeah, I would love
descriptive.
that. And meanwhile, that hits pretty hard because I desperately, most of my life, wanted to belong.
Mhm.
In fact, Brené Brown talks about this too, because, and there's a difference between belonging and fitting in.
Yes. Yeah.
And I used to think fitting in was what belonging was.
Hmm.
And so as a recovering people pleaser, I used to chameleon myself to try to fit into whatever other people expected of me. I did it in every relationship I had to the point where they really didn't honestly know who I was because I just looked like I adopted their taste in music and and decorating
Right?
and food. They'd like, well, what do you want? And my reflection would always be, well, whatever you want. And then I would just, go along, because I thought that I needed to be like other people. But the idea of belonging is a much gentler sense.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes into like the spiritual work that I'm doing, then all the stuff where like you belong because you exist. You are worthy because you exist. And in fact, what I found is that when I am having deep talks with people, and no matter how much we may disagree about something, if people are being real and authentic and owning their stuff, and not projecting it on me and trying to blame me for stuff, but if they're, then I feel safe almost no matter what the topic is. But if somebody is like just honing in on reflecting me back to myself and trying to look shiny,
Right.
then I
Right.
feel really unsafe, which is like the opposite of fitting in.
No, absolutely. But I also think, what rises in me is that feeling of rejection literally feels unsafe in the body, right? That's why I think it's at the core because kids will join gangs. They'll, a child will go with its homeless mother and not have food to be with its mother. You know what I mean? Like it is a base, almost primal bodily feeling to want to belong. I think it is safety. Yeah.
It tracks, and it's survival,
Yeah, absolutely.
to
Yeah.
and having grown up with a father whose preferred form of punishment was, basically to ignore you.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and I grew up believing if I did anything that made him upset that I'd be alone.
Mm.
And there were times I have stories where he like would deliberately do things, and little league game, I miss a ball in the outfield. He was my coach. He didn't talk to me the rest of the game.
Wow.
And he did this his whole life. He never stopped doing this kind of behavior,
Yeah.
but it's only once I learned that it was because of his own shame that he would do that. But meanwhile, growing up with that in your environment, I was terrified of having done something that upset people. And
Yeah.
I'm still almost 62 years old. I'm still in a place where if I feel like I may have upset I have anxiety around that. It
Yeah.
doesn't run me anymore,
Right. Right.
but who it
I mean,
is
that's
not.
what we're talking about with the complex. Like, what I love to say about this work that we do in our coaching is I find for myself and my clients, we're not so swept away because can't you remember that feeling of just being completely swept away if like just lost if you upset someone?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have panic attacks,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
Um, and it's been interesting to learn how to balance
Mhm.
that. And as I become aware of the different parts of my psyche and what they're doing, and that they're just trying to help
Yeah.
me be safe,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially the strong emotional reactions are all about trying to help me be safe. If I let that part of me run me, it's going to be chaotic.
Right. Right.
And then I project my shadow on everything. Um, so winding kind of back to where we were in terms of the process, are you coaching people through books now, or is that a chapter that has passed and now more the coaching is where you're at?
I am, but so I used to do developmental editing. That was a big part of my work. And I just am so not interested because that's about the book and not the person. So I am doing a program. It's called Writing Your Heretics Home. And so it's essentially uh, taking people through that writing process with me as a partner. you know, excavation, as you said. I use a
Yeah.
lot of excavation language, and on my website, I'm just obsessed with this idea of digging past. I'm going to switch. I'm going to squirrel for a moment. I'm so passionate, Robert, about all of these places where we did buy into the norms and what society said. I mean, I am so just feeling that breaking from the herd, just feeling that like what are we here to do, like what are we here to live. I'm
Mm-hmm.
so into that. Everything I write is about that, whether it's not buying into the sort of you know wellness culture of lululemons, and nothing against lululemons, but just all of the things we think we should be physically. It's about I just wrote a post about my MFA process and how I was basically went silent writing publicly for 9 years because of that criticism. And this ties back into that feeling of belonging. I wanted
Mm.
nothing more than to belong to the society of artists and writers and the literati, I call them. I just wanted to belong so badly to that group. And I just could not take the criticism. My stepfather was very critical. I've really worked through that, and I don't hold anything there anymore. But I came home one year with all A's and a B on my report card. And every morning he would play If I Only Had a Brain from The Wizard of Oz. So criticism
Uh,
is brutal. It was brutal for me. And no matter how much I work through and I'm no longer swept away, it still comes back around and comes. So yeah, I went silent. I worked writing adjacent, right? I helped
mm.
other people write so that
Yeah.
I didn't have to feel that being kicked out of the cave feeling, right? Yeah. So
How
I don't
did
know if I answered your question because I just was feeling this other thing to share. Yeah.
no, I appreciate that. How, because it's also pretty resonant. How did you work your way through that? Because it sounds avoidant, like I'm going to go do this so I don't have to face these feelings.
Yeah, and I wasn't aware of it. I really wasn't aware that my helping other people write was a way to avoid my own.
Well, you were usually not aware of our
Yeah, it
avoidant
was,
tendencies.
yeah.
I avoid through intellectualization still.
Hmm. Yeah. So I did write. I revised my first novel. I wrote a second novel, but everything was locked down. I was not sharing that with anybody. But I used to have a really successful blog, like not to toot my horn, but I had a pretty successful blog and I just stopped. Like it was just nothing
Oh,
publicly for 9 years. And
wow.
I just came out, I don't know, a couple months ago. And I think to answer your question, what changed for me was this work that we do. It was like I am no longer interested in being part of the herd, like I'm genuinely not interested at all. And not that I'm like owning this sort of reject archetype, but that it doesn't matter to me if I don't fit in or belong. Like I'm here for something bigger than that. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious about what the process was. What had you start waking up? Was there a moment? Was there an experience? Is it starting this study of this material or?
I do think it was. I think it was doing shadow work. I would think it was uncovering these patterns of like, what was it like to live with such criticism, right? And how did that shape me? And I really resonated with your story, Robert, like of the silence, because even though it's not quite the same flavor, if I wasn't excelling, if my
Yeah.
appearance, I remember one year we got school photos and I was a latchkey. I'm a Gen X, born in 1970, drinking out of the hose, all the cliches, but I wore my key around my neck with a piece of yarn. And in my school pictures, oh, I was a very homely child. I had a Dorothy Hamill haircut and just really bad teeth. And anyways, I'm not being unkind to myself. It's just the truth.
Yeah.
And so my school picture had this yarn in it, and I got in so much, like it was like you had to look a certain way,
Oh,
you had
that.
to appear a certain way, you had
Oh,
to,
yeah.
toe that line, you had to do the grades. Like basketball was, I loved it, but it was a nightmare. We had to play horse for hours and I'd end up crying, because it was just like you had to do all of it, right? Just to
So
feel like you were accepted. Yeah.
was there a breaking point? I mean, like I can trace back to, for me, it was like my third divorce when I woke up, but like, was there some point at where, cause like that 9 years of closeting who you
Oh,
really are, and
oh,
then
I'm
what
picking what you're
happened? What,
laying down.
spill
Okay,
it.
okay, I got it. It wasn't just, you're right, you're right. No, you're really great at this, Robert. It wasn't just the Jungian work. When I started Creative Mind, I had had 4 deaths in my family. I lost my father, my biological father, an uncle. I mean, in my family's very close, right? So, then right before I started the program, I lost my brother. He fell into his own campfire and did not make it. I lost my ex-husband who, like, nobody gets out of our family. When you're in, you're in. Like he lived between my brother and my mother and we were friends. Um so he died a couple months later and it was like a series of 10 deaths. And I feel this so strongly that when you experience that kind of loss and that kind of grief, this other stuff just really isn't all that important. You know, like, I mean, really, like, you know, I got some crow's feet, or I don't know, like a neck tag. I mean, I really like, do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Or somebody doesn't like my writing, or I don't know, like, does it matter? You know,
wow.
that's really the answer to your question.
That's that's a lot.
Yeah, it
And
was.
it has me reflecting because the year before I did my cohort, about 18-month period of time, my mom passed.
Oh,
3 months later, her partner, who had had dementia for 5 years, passed.
wow.
I retired. The only relationship I've had in the last 7.5 years, a year long, healthy, my first ever healthy relationship ended.
Oh,
And then my dad died, and I was with him
wow.
that morning. And I had saved up the grief. And then once my dad passed, and we had had, as described, a challenging relationship, but we'd healed a lot. We talked a lot. That morning, I was holding his hand. He wasn't very coherent, but I was thanking him for all the work that we had done,
Oh,
as he was on his way out anyway. The next day, I got to find out what grief was like.
wow. I have
And
chills all over, by the way.
it was all over the place. I had high highs. Like within 24 hours of his passing, I had licensed my company and posted about it. And then after that, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? And I went through these crashing low. And I went through like 3 huge, what I would have thought was manic depressive cycles in a week.
Yeah. So, that experience you just shared of all of those things, your mom, your job, your relationship, your father, that's the dark night of the soul that so often calls us into this work of individuation. I mean, is there anything else? Like, if everything is just going along and wonderful, and I used to say, let's say you plant a seed in the ground, people think, oh, it becomes this beautiful flower. It's there in the dark, breaking apart, struggling up through the soil. Like, there's a whole lot of process before, and I just don't think there's any growth when it's all just smooth sailing. Yeah.
And I agree. And I suppose that's part of my way of like recognizing that what you just went through, which it's isn't it amazing how we will minimize such experiences
Yeah.
and forget about them.
Hmm.
But like, yeah, absolutely. That's you may have been on the path anyway. And I was on the path anyway. I'd been
Oh,
coaching for a while.
yeah.
But that combination did two main things to me. One is it woke me up to a greater depth of
Hmm.
the experience of living. And two, it slowed me down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I needed to be slowed down
Hmm.
because I own the H in ADHD.
Oh, that's another squirrel. I almost want to fight. I've never been tested, but I'm sure I can look at my report cards and be like, Melanie is bright, but she likes to talk to others. Or I mean, I just think there's some undiagnosed stuff going on there that,
Oh
us
yeah.
Gen Xers just, or whatever, had to just knuckle through, and you know,
Yeah, it
yeah,
it it was somewhat amazing that I was able to be successful. But one of the things I realized, and it's a subject of a book that I will write,
oh,
I call it the energy balance, which is the idea that we have at any given moment a finite amount of psychic energy to use. And I don't mean like psychic as in,
I mean,
paranormal.
libido, yeah,
I mean, it's like, yeah.
yeah.
And we use it in various ways, and some of it goes into energy such as rumination and endless loops and fear and stuff like that, and that's energy. And I discovered this because I had done work with an organization known as Landmark, and one of their philosophies was that restoring integrity builds vitality. And I
Mm.
found that to be like a miracle, that when you like clean up all of the incomplete things in your life, that all of a sudden you like feel like you can fly again. And it was such a repeatable thing. And I realized that that just means that's tying up some of your psychic energy. And so the philosophy is that you can map across multiple areas. You could make a spider diagram if you like such things, and realize where your energy is going. And then you, as a result, can choose. Well, there's also things you can do to increase the total amount you have available. But largely, what is available, if you want more energy or more focus or more, suppose you want to write a book, for example, one of the things to do is look at where your energy leaks are, where you're spending your energy, and to decide, is that where you really want to be spending your energy? And, like all of the philosophies that I use as a coach, I needed them for me.
Oh,
Turns out that
we're
being a
our
bit of a
own ideal
basket,
clients. Yes.
yeah, it turns out that having lived my life as a basket case has served me as a coach.
You know, Robert, I worked at a government mental health agency for 7 years. And I remember this was back in the early aughts, the 2000, 2001. We did an ADHD camp. I think it might have been ADD back then, but it was they called it the lollipop diagnosis because everybody was being diagnosed with it, right? So we did this summer camp and there were like 70 kids in the room. And I remember looking around and going, these kids are so bright and they're just bored out of their minds. So I think it's almost a gift. And it reminds me of what you said earlier about procrastination. Sometimes, Daniel Laporte said this actually, but procrastination can be a form of intuition.
Say more.
Well, why are we waiting? Our ego has a timeline.
Okay.
Right? Our ego has a timeline, like, I got to do this now. And sometimes we're waiting further information.
Yeah, that does track. It's, in fact, when I've talked about, and I've written a number of posts about procrastination, and it may be time for me to do that again, is there's multiple forms of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of them that we tend to short shrift is that one that, like, maybe this is just not the right time. And if that's the case, I don't consider that procrastination.
No,
I consider that like intelligently choosing priorities.
Yeah. Well, I love what you're saying too about the focus and the energy. Like, I think for myself, as I age, I used to live, the funnels. I used to live up here swirling around with all the things because I had so many interests.
Oh, yeah.
Age, I just find myself in that narrowing. And it's not restrictive. It's just that there's only certain things that I want to focus on now. Like, there is a narrowing of where I want to put my libido, my life force energy. Yeah.
So you're selective. You are discerning. Is that a good word?
That's a great word. Yeah. Very discerning now. Yeah.
I can be discerning.
Yeah.
And when I'm activated, and I'm in this continuing very steep growth process of discovery, and I went on a writing sabbatical in Hawaii for 17 days.
Yeah.
And I came home on fire. I had like all the things. And what was interesting to me about that, it also ties into this conversation. So I like that, is that I realized that while I am a creative force, I am inherently a very creative person. I have a strong side of both pattern recognition and enjoyment and problem solving and ideation. Those are strong characteristics within me. And it can be a form of avoidance.
Yeah.
And which does then fit back into procrastination. And that one of the ways that I can avoid, and it's interesting because it's hard to catch, is that I can go into extreme creativity. I can go into deep intellectual study of a topic. And I have great skills in these areas. And two things. One is I can drive people crazy. And two is I can do that to avoid having the feelings that I need to do to process. And as I've done that, I use an AI tool to help me reflect on my own work and my own process. And now it'll catch it like in heartbeat. It'll like reflect back to me. Yeah, I now have it's going to be a whole other conversation if we want to dig into it. And by the way, I do want to dig into it with you.
I'm actually interested. People ask me what I think about AI for writing, and I have a whole lot of opinions. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't like using it for writing because it tends to produce very bland, vanilla, formulaic
Right.
things.
Right.
I use it as a reflection tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the topic that I want to really dig into with you later is like this. I've made a matrix of characteristics I have, including avoidance, shame, numbing, and distraction. And I did this because I can articulate my methodology very well. But if anybody's going to recognize, hey, I'd like to work with you, they're not going to say, man, I really want to do that Jungian work on my shadow.
No,
That
no.
said no one ever.
We're the only ones that just can geek out and talk about that all day long. Like every
And
time
I
I
do
bring it up,
run across people
yeah.
that are really curious about Jung. In fact, that people that have done a lot of study tend to be a better fit. But what I've realized is that I need to get back into the language that other people use and the language that I used when I was describing my challenges with these things. And in the process, I spent a very deep brainstorming session with one of my mentors. And then I built upon it. And now I have this like matrix that starts off with what would they say? What are the things they would be saying now? And goes into what are they thinking? What are the challenges? There's a whole lot. I want to share this with you later. But I'm now using it to see where I am and what intensity level I have for each of those qualities at any given moment. And one of the ones that shows up fairly regularly is avoidance, but it doesn't look like I don't care. It's not apathy. My avoidance can look like high output in some other area, which reminds me of the kitchen gets clean when I have the report due. And they call it procrastivity. Which I think is a really cool term.
That is.
And other people that are friends of mine that also have some ADHD type qualities resonate with that term a lot.
I like it.
And one of the reasons it's been hard for me to work my way through is because I actually am getting something done, something I care about, something meaningful. And because there's always so many things in the funnel, an endless number of things in the funnel, I can basically focus on whatever I focus on at the moment. And it just seems like I am just scattering along the clouds and pursuing things that are truly meaningful, but not being aware of it and not being at choice about it left me working a whole lot of hours. And not taking care of myself and not taking care of the things that really deeply mattered to me. And that's one of the differences for me now is that, I can also go into the neck of the funnel and I can do it by choice.
Pull it down. Like I'm literally getting this image. I love your mind. I really do. I'm not a smoke blower. I never was as a developmental editor either. Ask my people, but I do love your mind. And I literally can see this image of you pulling down whatever it is that's swirling into that narrowing place and just then you focus. But it's a choice.
It's an interesting process. Also, it turns out this is one of the areas I can help people a lot. In fact, I'm specifically targeting high functioning, analytical, systems thinkers.
Love that.
That are called to help others that are stuck and that they know what to do. They already know what to do. In fact, they tell other people.
Right.
And yet, like me, like you need help figuring out how to get yourself into the funnel. And I mean, this is an ongoing, and I think I have some unique qualifications because it's been so hard for me that I've explored a lot of different tools to do that. And some of it is pull it down. Some of it is just allow it, just separate and let it come in. And kind of, it turns out that if I can do it gently, I have a better balanced life. I can do it either way. But if I'm doing it by forcing it, and whenever we start pushing,
it's like a beer bong. I don't know if those are still a thing today, but back in my day, I mean, you're really forcing that gravity.
that'll do it. And ultimately, that's a spiritual thing. It's a Jungian thing. But one of the things that I found through the Jungian work is that when I'm aware of what's going on, then it stops being so much of a struggle. It stops being force myself to do the thing. Because I could force myself to do the thing, but like I said earlier, it cost me.
Yeah.
It cost me sleep. I had like physical ailments, ulcers. I had panic attacks. It cost me the ability to focus, and probably more deeply than anything else, and I didn't realize it at the time, it cost me my ability to actually connect with other people. And in the realm of belonging, I would never know that I belonged, and I would never able to actually belong, because to do that, you have to, one, be willing to be vulnerable and authentic in the first place. And I wasn't. And then you have to be willing to be in that space. And living a life where I forced myself to do things all the time, I was just exhausted and always performing for my world. So there was never a chance for me to allow that to happen. So this is a discovery in my late 50s to early 60s. And in a way, it was one of the reasons that I think I show up somewhat energetically, is I feel like I've just been born.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I love that metaphor.
Can I share something that I think just landed for me as you were talking? You're talking about like working to the exclusion of like your wellness practices. And if I bring it all the way back around to writing, I think if you can show up not in the beer bong way, like I don't know. I have a weird
I love that you pulled that one out there. That's good.
I mean, we just see in images, but if you're not forcing it and you're not like so struggling to sit down and go clean the grout and sit down, and I mean, if you show up daily like a spiritual practice at the page, that flow state happens more easily as you go on, right? It's literally like a spiritual devotion, or it can be, right? Yeah.
That really lands. It also, I think, brilliantly ties together all the things we're sort of a really great sign.
I'm a pattern recognizer too. I like to, that's how I do. I think I'm not tooting my horn, but I just see all of that and then see how it kind of all weaves together, if you will. Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of the reasons that I always have so much fun talking with you, because I love diving deep and then reflecting from our different life experiences. And, one philosophy that the minister that I work with says often is, how we do one thing is how we do everything, which, like most aphorisms, is overly simplified. But the idea is there's patterns within which we understand some things, and those same patterns help us understand others and ourselves and our behaviors. And I think that's brilliant. And I'm not only taking this as a reflection, I'm also taking this as guidance. Because the writing of the book, sometimes it comes out of me, almost like I'm like regurgitating it. I mean, it's almost like a compulsive vomiting forth of the material. And prior to and during my sabbatical, that's what it was. Yeah. I now have 1,000 idea cards for my first book, all harvested from my transcripts, my writings, my meetings, my posts, stuff like that. More than enough to write a book on. I've got every chapter of The Engineer's Guide already mapped out and deeply documented. And that happened because I let it happen.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And now there's a new step of synthesis and of actually doing the writing. And I find I've been resisting.
Can I make a recommendation?
Absolutely.
Often people would come to me, and I did this in my own MFA program, in my master's degree program. I showed up with a book and I had this idea in my head that this was what I was going to do. And my first mentor said, just start over. And I've done this to many clients. You know, one of them. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, this isn't it. Start over. And our mind is like, oh, but I'm going to lose all this brilliance. It's
Yeah,
so
Sam, I'm already
good. Like,
bracing. The moment you said that, I'm like, ah.
yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. It is a real fear, right? But your mind has all of that in there. And when I did just start over, some of it came back like word for word. And what my recommendation, if it resonates with you, is that you have that container with yourself where you don't think about anyone reading it, and you just let the whole draft just land out like that clay before you touch a word or try to revise. You know, Carl Jung, this book, Robert, is one of the greatest books. It's called Jung on Art,
Okay.
The Autonomy of the Creative Drive. So Jung literally
Ooh.
felt like when you're in, I'm going to paraphrase him. I'm not an expert, but when you're in that flow state, your complexes are literally emerging from your unconscious, and you're not revising during that. You're not thinking
Yeah.
about the audience.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about where it's going to go. My favorite quote, like from myself, it's like, you may want your book baby to go to Yale and Oxford, and it might want to work at Arby's, and that's perfectly noble too. Like, you just create and let it be a spiritual practice.
I'm going to share my last direct visual metaphor of that I've been finding very useful for me.
Please, yeah.
And I've had this vision in multiple active imagination sessions. There's a river, a mountain river, and it's a river, not a creek. And near the river, there is a water wheel and a mill.
Yeah.
And from that water wheel going upstream is a sluice gate where you can then direct it into the river and then power the water wheel. All of this has deep, meaning in terms of water being creative flow and knowledge and all that. Damming the river, rerouting the river, controlling the river is useless and potentially destructive.
Yeah.
So part of my work is to let the river flow. And sometimes my posts are, most of my posts are stream of consciousness. I just let them go, let it go.
Yeah, right.
And doing that, having that practice keeps the gears running. Meanwhile, I can direct that sluice gate anywhere at any depth in that river that I want and pull from it whatever it is that I need for productive use. So part of me is to let the river flow and let it flow on a regular daily basis. And then I can channel into it whatever I want. But more than anything else, I want to make sure that river keeps flowing naturally. Because when I used to try to force things to happen, I was trying to dam the river and divert it. And that takes a lot of energy, and it completely fights what nature is.
Can I add to your metaphor?
Oh, go for it.
I'm literally thinking of when we first start, all of the debris that comes down the mountain, it is full of weeds. It rocks. My culvert, I have to go dig it out or it floods my yard. I have to go pull it out of the culvert and toss it, right? So when you first start, you're having to go through that whole debris that's coming through that river for the first time in the spring.
Sure.
So take that or leave that. But yeah, I could see that really.
Well, there is no end to where this metaphor can lead me. I have drawn art about this. I've even had AI created images about it. But that tying all of this together is the really deep work of getting into what my psyche is doing and letting it do that.
Yes.
Supporting it in doing that, and not trying to force myself into behavior change that is not grounded in deep self-knowingness. That was the miracle of this Jungian work for me. I've done, cognitive behavioral therapy, all the stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You name it,
Yeah.
I've done it.
Mhm.
And trying to force myself to change or force myself to start or stop or whatever had very limited. It was basically building a dam that would eventually just becomes destroyed by the deluge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meanwhile, letting the natural flow of life happen and following with it and paying attention to it, and maybe regularly going through and weeding. There's a whole, I mean, I could take a whole other hour and talk about the spiritual ramifications of that, but that will be another talk. Meanwhile, I came into this without any concrete expectations, and I'm glad, because this has been a truly, truly amazing conversation.
Yeah.
I'm honored to have this chat with you.
Yeah. It was so my pleasure. Literally feel that we were in flow, that we were, we didn't have a lot of silt or a lot of rock or a lot of weed that we had to, you know.
Well, this is it's a delightfully supportive friendship, and I'm grateful to know you and to stay in contact. One of the things that I forget to do, and I'm going to try to do intentionally right now, one, if people want to reach out to you or reach you for any of your support as a coach or as access to any of the things that you do, how would they do that? Obviously, if you give me links afterwards, I'll include them in the meeting notes. But how would people reach you if they wanted to connect with you?
So literally just my website, it's melaniebates.com, and Substack. Those are the two places I really hang out. I'm not huge on social media. On there once in a while, but yeah, Substack and my website. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
It's been such an honor to be here with you, Robert. I really, really enjoyed this. I was nervous coming in. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, honestly, so was I. It's like, oh yeah, we have a podcast scheduled. This isn't just a chat. Oh no, I need to be prepared.
No,
But this has been
right.
really delightful. Oh, and I have to do this because I forget to do this. For
Yeah.
the listeners, I'm Robert Haynes. I am a certified Jungian life coach, and my desire is to help helpers. I help people that have strong analytical and systems thought, that truly are committed to helping other people, especially other people that help other people. And my specialty is helping people get unstuck in the process of being a human being.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing.
Well, thank you, Melanie. It has been
Thank you.
absolutely delightful.